Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Crypto Chats. This week I have a fun one for you. We're going to talk about the Ohio Grassman. The Ohio Grassman is just another branch of the Sasquatch family tree. So let's get into it. So, being a relative of the Sasquatch or being, part of the Sasquatch family tree, the Ohio Grassman has, the very classic Bigfoot description to it. 6 to 7 feet tall, weighing around 500 pounds, bipedal, really bulky, with dark fur and wide shoulders, a big head, shaggy hair, with red or orange eyes, and very, ape human like. But also very smelly. One of the things that I thought was funny in doing my research was that, according to the internet, and I don't know how true this is because I don't live in that area, but some people, I guess, just refer to the Ohio Grassman as orange eyes. Which I was like, that's really silly. I like that. So as with the name, the Ohio Grassman is known to kind of lurk in the wooded areas of Ohio, and its first documented actual documented sighting was in August of 1978 by the Clayton family. The Clayton family ended up having a very weird relationship with the Ohio Grassmen. It was an ongoing thing for them, and once they saw it once, it kind of just kept going for a while. So we're going to talk about their sightings and their, I guess, relevance to the Ohio Grassman because I think it's really interesting. Their first sighting happened in 1978, as I said, in August, where their 3 children were playing outside when they saw a creature in the nearby gravel pit. The kids didn't know what it was, just that it was big and kind of scary looking, so they ran inside to go tell their parents, who then went outside with them to try to see the creature for themselves. And when they went outside, they actually did see the creature, and what they witnessed was it going through the trash and sifting through the rubble. So that's really weird. According to the rest of the story, they kind of just were oh shit, and ran back inside, and eventually the Grassman just left his post sifting through rubble. And so then they actually encountered this Grassman. It might not have been the same one, but a Grassman many times after that. They did not catch a break in relation to encounters with this creature. And it just it was very interested in them. It came back, and Mrs. Clayton claimed that, she saw it watching her through the kitchen window a lot of times, standing in their backyard, just watching through the window. Mr. Clayton was said to go get his gun on one of these occasions, but by the time he got back, the creature was gone. It's almost it sensed that he was about to try and shoot it, so it just yeeted out of there. It was weird because, the only thing it left was, some footprints, which is not totally unusual, but also, a really bad smell. And I think that's probably one of my favorite things about weird encounters like this, is that they're so stinky. They're just, I don't know why it's so funny to me, but, they're stinky. Obviously, yeah, they live in the woods. They gotta be a little stinky. But I always think it's really funny when, I'm reading reports of sightings of, any cryptid, really, and it's oh, and it left this really bad smell. I'm just well, yeah, it lives in the woods. It's gonna be a little stinky. I always think it's funny. I don't really know why. But the Clayton family did report that every time they encountered this creature, it was very stinky. So, it fits with the general description. They later saw the creature on a hill atop of a strip mine that was near their house, and this was at night. And then, so that's creepy. I know that would be definitely, to me at least, more scary than seeing it during the day. And it's funny that I say that because the Clayton family did also see this creature during the day in the same spot, but during the day they reported that there were 2 of them. Which, just further fuels the theory that obviously we think that Sasquatches are a whole species and not just one singular creature. So that really adds to that, and I think it probably scared them a little bit more too, knowing that it was potentially a group of them that were kind of fucking with them instead of just one, which is, yeah, I get it. I understand. That's definitely scarier. What's sad though, this part bums me out. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh man, yeah, it makes sense, but that's sad. So the Claytons had a German Shepherd, I believe, that few days before the very first encounter they had with these creatures, they found it dead in their yard, with snapped neck, and naturally they were pretty bummed about it. And after all of these encounters with this creature, they kind of put two and two together and were like, oh shit, I think this thing killed our dog. Which, with, I guess with what we know about Sasquatches, it checks out. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a fucking Sasquatch expert. I do my best, but I'm not an expert, but to me that it checks out with some of other reports that have come out and stuff, but it's such a bummer. That sucks, that's poor dog. Y'all could have just hung out, been friends, sifted through the trash together. But the Grassmen said no, and that was a bummer of a realization for them. And yeah. After that, to my knowledge, they didn't really have many experiences, and if they did not really talk about it that much. But that's crazy that this family for a couple months was constantly being targeted by these creatures. And I said targeted, I don't necessarily think that they were targeted, but I think, after the first encounter with the children, I think the Grassmen were probably interested in them, and much like we observe wild animals to try to learn things about them, I'm sure Sasquatches are pretty interested in what the hell we're doing, especially because there's obviously a very big similarity in between humans and Sasquatches, the fact that, well, I feel like I don't really need to explain this that much. I feel like we're all kind of on the same wavelength, that a Sasquatch is a humanoid ape creature. So I don't really need to go down that path too far. But, so it's only natural for them to want to study us back, I guess. So I think especially because they never really tried to attack the Clayton family, I think it was probably more observation than anything, and I think that their reports of what actually happened does confirm that, because they definitely could have attacked them and just did not. So anyway, so what's interesting to me, and I feel like this is pretty standard kind of wherever you go where there's legends or tales of these kinds of creatures, the people that are indigenous to that area have known of these races of creatures for, hundreds of years. I think that's kind of just how it goes because, they were here first, and it just makes sense for them to know what was hanging around before we discovered it. And so the indigenous people in this area of Ohio specifically have lore that dates back to the early 1700s about the Grassman specifically, except in their lore, they're called Wild Ones of the Woods. And what I think is interesting, and this is pretty standard in, at least what I found in my research, and when it comes to indigenous tribes and the way that they interact with a lot of the wildlife around them, and, they would leave offerings as a bit of a peacekeeping deal. With these other creatures that cohabitated this area, which is cool. I think that's great. And we do that at my house. We leave offerings for the weird little creatures that live in our woods because there's definitely something back there. And yeah, I think it's a really good habit to get into. I think we should all be leaving peace offerings for our otherworldly friends. But yeah, I think that's interesting, and they had their own name for them, and I think it's really cool that there's documented information in the form of old native lore that has detailed, encounters with these creatures that we're researching nowadays. Anyway, I got a little rambly in the beginning. So there were some sightings of it that were kind of like, word of mouth in the 1800s. And I think it's interesting and I want to bring it up. And they were made by the Ohio River. So, like, in that general area, there was one particular tale that there was a man who was tossed from his carriage by the creature. I can't tell you how that came to be. I do not know. I don't know if maybe they, like, almost ran into it, or if this Grassman was feeling particularly feisty that day and just said, you know what, I'm gonna go fuck with this guy in his carriage. I don't really know. I can't tell you for sure. But what I do know is that according to this tale, that the Grassman only retreated when this man's daughter started throwing rocks at it, which I think is fair. Like, I think I'd probably run away too if someone was throwing rocks at me. But I guess, like, it does kind of make sense because when in my research, like, one of the things that, there's like a million different family tree branches in the Sasquatch family tree. And I think that, there's a lot of regional Sasquatches, and then there's, ones from different countries, and we've got a lot of that type of creature roaming around, and, since there's so many variations of it, like, there's going to be different temperaments and different dietary habits, and, there's differences amongst all of them. And one of the things that I learned in my research about the Grassman, which, I mean, this might not be true. It might be true. I don't know. Again, I'm not a Sasquatch expert, so I cannot tell you whether or not this is for fact. But it's that the Grassman was said to be very aggressive, like very aggressive, which is, that taking that into consideration and some of the other reports and, like, things that I've talked about today, it's like, yeah, so that Grassman was feeling feisty when he, yeeted that man from his carriage, which is fair. I think that's pretty funny. But then with the Claytons, it's like, it didn't attack the Claytons. It went after their dog, but it did not attack the Claytons, and it just kind of observed them and had plenty of opportunity to actually, attack any of that family if it had really wanted to. But yeah, I mean, I think that's super interesting, and I don't know, like, I oftentimes say that I would definitely love to run into one of these creatures out in the woods, but truthfully, I don't know if that's real. I don't know if I would actually like that. I think in theory I would, but in practice, I think I would probably be really scared. The other really interesting thing about this specific cryptid is that there have been samples of feces and hair that have been collected and analyzed by the Ohio State University. But as what is, usual with cases of, like, Sasquatch-like creatures, is that there's no known match to any animal that we know of. So I feel like that's kind of how it always is. And, like, I'm sure if you were to, like, super, super analyze that DNA and, like, actually look at the DNA code, you would probably see that it's, one or two off from an ape or even a human in either direction. But that's interesting because I feel like that seems to be the case every single time. And I'm feeling like maybe at this point we just take one of those pieces of DNA and we go, this is a Sasquatch. And then we can just compare all the other ones to that one, Because, like, at this point it's like every single time we analyze a piece of DNA that's supposedly from, a Sasquatch or any of its, relatives, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, well, this isn't a match to any known animal DNA. It's like, okay, well, is it a match to any of the other samples that we've collected over time and, like, analyzed that were also not a match to any known animal DNA? Because I bet you they probably are. I think it's interesting. I don't know. That's all I really have about the Grassman. I mean, there's a million other stories out there. One of the things I like about the Grassman is that there are movies and books and, like, so much media that's been written about this creature. And I guess that goes for most Sasquatch variants. Is there's a lot of media surrounding them. So I think in the description of this episode, I'm going to link a couple books that I think are really cool, that I have read that I really like. And yeah, so hopefully you guys will read them if you would like any more information or any of the intricacies of investigating these kinds of cryptids. And yeah, so I will wrap up this episode. I will see you guys next week. I hope you enjoyed this 15-minute long rambling about the Ohio Grassman. And I will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. Bye.